Spain had always felt like a fever dream to me. Mackenzie Riley, a 28-year-old photographer from Brooklyn who traded the concrete jungle for the sun-baked alleys of Andalusia on a whim. I'd come here 6 months earlier, fleeing a dead-end job and a string of heartbreaks that left me questioning if love was just another filter on Instagram, pretty from afar, but up close, all distortion. Seville welcomed me with its labyrinth of whitewashed walls and the scent of jasmine clinging to the air like a lover's perfume. I rented a tiny apartment above a tapas bar in the Triana neighborhood, where flamenco guitars wailed through open windows at midnight, and every corner hid a story begging to be captured through my lens. That's where I first saw Madison Hale. She was 27, with the kind of effortless grace that made you forget your own name, long, sun-kissed blonde waves framing a face that could launch 1,000 ships or, in her case, 1,000 headlines back home. She was American too, but from a world light years from my dive bar existence, the only daughter of Senator Elias Hale, a silver-tongued powerhouse from Virginia whose face graced C-SPAN like it was his birthright. Madison had escaped to Seville for personal growth, as her glossy travel blog put it, but I later learned it was more like a gilded cage break, her father's way of keeping her out of the D.C. spotlight while he maneuvered his next re-election bid. We met at the Feria de Abril, that riot of color and chaos where Seville explodes into a whirlwind of polka-dot dresses and flower-crowned horses. I was crouched low, camera in hand, snapping shots of a group of gypsy dancers when she stumbled into my frame, literally. Her heel caught on a cobblestone, and she pitched forward, right into my lap. Laughter bubbled out of her first, bright and unfiltered, as she dusted off her ruffled skirt. Lo siento, she said, though her accent screamed East Coast prep school. I think I've just photobombed your Pulitzer. I grinned, helping her up, my hand lingering a beat too long on her arm. Nah, this one's going straight to the wall. American tourist conquers gravity, and my heart, maybe. From there, it was effortless, like we'd both been waiting for the other to show up. Mornings blurred into lazy afternoons at Café de la Isla, where we'd split churros dipped in thick hot chocolate, debating everything from Picasso's Blue Period to why Virginia ham beat out Brooklyn bagels any day. She'd talk about her life in whispers, the pressure of being the senator's perfect daughter, the endless galas where she'd smile through gritted teeth while whispers of arranged alliances floated like cigar smoke. Dad sees me as an extension of his brand, she'd say, tracing patterns in the sugar on the table. But here, I can just be. I'd share my own scars, growing up in a row house where my mom's diner shifts meant microwave dinners, and how photography became my armor against a world that felt too big and too cold. We were opposites in so many ways, her polished edges to my rough-hewn ones, but in the quiet moments, when the siesta sun filtered through her balcony shutters, we'd find common ground in the spaces between our breaths. Our first kiss happened on a rooftop overlooking the Giralda Tower, the city sprawled golden below us. Her lips tasted like sangria and secrets, soft and hesitant at first, then deepening with a hunger that mirrored my own. I've never, she murmured against my neck later, her fingers tangled in my hair. Not like this. Not with a woman. Me neither, not really, I lied a little, because my fumbling college experiments didn't count against this electric pole. We were both virgins to something real, something that scared us as much as it thrilled. Nights turned into tangled sheets in her rented finca on the outskirts, where we'd trace maps on each other's skin with fingertips and whispers, building a world that was ours alone. No politics, no expectations, just Madison and Mac, two women stealing time from the universe. But Seville has a way of whispering warnings if you listen close enough. It started small, a black SUV idling too long outside her place, men in crisp suits asking after Señorita Hale at the local market. She'd brush it off with a laugh, Dad's paranoia, you know how senators are, but I'd catch the flicker of fear in her green eyes, the way she'd check her phone like it might bite. Still, we pushed on, planning lazy weekends in Ronda, dreaming of extending our visas, maybe even turning this interlude into something permanent. What if we stayed? She'd ask one evening, her head on my chest as the crickets chorused outside. Just us, no Hales or Rylas. A life here, with olive trees and no winter. I'd pull her closer, breathing in the lavender of her shampoo. I'd follow you anywhere, Mads. Even if it meant trading my camera for a shepherd's crook. Fate, though, doesn't do detours. It was a humid August afternoon when everything shattered. We'd driven out to the Sierra Norte for a hike, her idea, to reconnect with the earth, she'd teased, and the road wound narrow through cork oak forests, the radio blasting some old Springsteen tune. Madison was behind the wheel of her rented Fiat, windows down, her laughter cutting through the wind as she belted out the chorus. I was fiddling with my camera, zooming in on a hawk circling overhead, when she swerved to avoid a stray dog darting across the blacktop. The world slowed then, a nightmare in high definition. Tires screamed, the car hydroplaned on a patch of loose gravel, and we careened toward the ravine edge. "Mac," she screamed, yanking the wheel, but gravity had other plans. I lunged across the console, grabbing the emergency brake and shoving her door open with my shoulder. "Jump!" I yelled, and she did, tumbling out onto the embankment as the Fiat flipped, metal twisting like a tin can under a boot. Pain exploded in my left leg as the undercarriage caught it on the way down, shearing bone and muscle in a vice of agony. I blacked out to the sound of her screams echoing down the hillside, the taste of blood and regret thick on my tongue. When I woke, it was to sterile white walls and the beep of monitors in a Granada hospital. My leg was gone below the knee, a bandaged stump that felt like a cruel joke. Madison was there, pale and hollow-eyed, clutching my hand like a lifeline. "You saved me," she whispered, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. "God, Mac, I thought I'd lost you." The days blurred into a haze of physical therapy and morphine dreams. Senator Hale arrived like a storm cloud on day 3, his entourage filling the room with the scent of expensive cologne and entitlement. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of jawline that screamed, "Born to lead," he took one look at me, disheveled, bandaged, very much not the son-in-law he'd envisioned, and his mouth tightened into a line. "Miss Riley," he said, voice smooth as bourbon but edged with steel, "your bravery is commendable. The family is, of course, eternally grateful." Grateful. The word hung there, laced with something unspoken. Madison hovered at his elbow, her eyes pleading with me to play nice. We did the dance, handshakes, small talk about my sacrifice, but underneath, I felt the undercurrent. I was the help, the inconvenient variable in their polished narrative. That night, after he'd swept her away to some private jet back to Madrid for family discussions, she called, her voice breaking. "He's insisting I come home, Mac. Says this. Us. It's a phase, amplified by the trauma. But I told him no. I love you." I wanted to believe her, clung to those words like a raft in the flood. But doubt crept in with the phantom pains, sharp reminders that I'd given a piece of myself for a love that might not survive the light of day. Discharge came a week later, and I hobbled into a world that suddenly felt too big for one leg. Madison returned, contrite and fierce, wheeling me through Seville in a rented chair, vowing we'd fight this together. We tried, therapy sessions where she'd hold my hand through the sweat and sobs, quiet dinners where she'd read poetry by Lorca to drown out my frustrations. But the cracks widened. She'd flinch at my clumsiness with the crutches, her smiles a touch too bright, and I'd snap, the anger boiling over from a body that no longer felt like mine. It culminated one stormy evening in her finca, thunder rattling the tiles like judgment from above. I dropped a glass, shards scattering like my patience, and she knelt to clean it, murmuring, "Let me help, babe." But the words twisted out wrong. "You're broken now, Mac, and I can't. I can't always be the strong one. Dad says we need space, professional counseling, and maybe he's right." Broken. The word landed like a slap, echoing every insecurity I'd buried. I stared at her, the woman who'd lit up my world, now shrinking under the weight of her father's shadow. "Space." I echoed, voice raw. "After everything. I lost my leg for you, Mads. Pulled you from that wreck while it mangled me. And now I'm just broken." She recoiled, tears spilling. "That's not, I didn't mean." But I was already grabbing my bag, the crutch digging into my armpit like a punishment. I left after losing my leg for her, I muttered to myself as I stormed into the rain, the phrase a bitter mantra. Now that Senator is searching everywhere for me. Because even then, I knew he'd spin this, the heroic savior turned liability, the scandal his daughter couldn't afford. I vanished into the night, boarding a train to Barcelona, then a ferry to France, determined to outrun the ghost of what we'd been. Little did I know, the search had already begun. Exile suited me in unexpected ways, or at least that's what I told myself in the dingy hostels of Lisbon and the fog-shrouded cafes of Porto. I was a ghost now, Mackenzie the photographer reduced to Mackenzie the drifter, my camera gathering dust in a pawnshop back in Seville for quick euros. The prosthetic they'd fitted me with in Granada was a clunky thing at first, carbon fiber and gel liners that chafe like regret, but I adapted, stubborn as ever. Morning started with grueling walks along the Tagus River, each step a negotiation with gravity, evenings with cheap Vinho Verde and scribbled journals full of unsent letters to Madison. I miss your laugh, I'd write, then rip the page, because what good were words when actions had failed us? News of the senator's manhunt trickled in via expat gossip and stolen Wi-Fi glances at American headlines. Senator Hale mobilizes resources in search for daughter's guardian angel, one article blared, painting me as some mythical figure, a blend of Florence Nightingale and Wonder Woman, who'd vanished without a trace. Photos of me from the hospital circulated, wide-eyed, bandaged, the ungrateful cripple who'd bolted. Madison's face was everywhere too, poised and tear-streaked in press conferences, pleading, "Mackenzie, if you're out there, please come home. We need you." Her words twisted in my gut. Did she mean them, or were they scripted by Daddy's PR machine? Betrayal festered like an open wound. I'd replay that night in the finca endlessly, her hesitation, the way she'd echoed her father's doubts without even realizing it. Was our love ever real, or just a beautiful lie we'd both needed in that suspended Spanish summer? I'd given her my mobility, my future, and in return, she'd offered pity wrapped in affection. The anger kept me moving, north through Galicia's green hills, then across the border into Basque country, where the rugged coast mirrored my fractured soul. In Bilbao, I found temporary solace in a women's co-op, a haven for artists and activists run by a fierce collective of lesbians who'd seen their share of heartaches. There was Sophia, a painter with tattooed arms and a laugh like thunder, who taught me to weld metal sculptures from scrap, therapy for hands that itched for a shutter click. Pain is just material, chica, she'd say over shared paella, her dark eyes kind but unflinching. Melt it down, reshape it. Don't let it define you. Nights around the communal fire pit, we'd swap stories, hers of fleeing Franco's echoes in her youth, mine of a love that cost me half my stride. They didn't pry, but in their quiet solidarity, I glimpsed what Madison and I could have built, a life unapologetic, woven from shared scars rather than silver spoons. Yet doubt gnawed. Dreams haunted me, Madison's green eyes pleading in the rain, the screech of tires, the wet snap of bone. I'd wake sweating, my stump throbbing, and wonder if I'd overreacted, if her words were born of exhaustion, not rejection. A care package arrived one gray afternoon, forwarded from the co-op's P.O. box, anonymous, but the lavender scent screamed her. Inside, my old Nikon, cleaned and loaded with film, a stack of Polaroids from our Seville days, us grinning atop horses at the feria, and a letter, scrawled in her looping script. Mac. I replayed that night 1,000 times, hating myself for the ugliness that spilled out. You weren't broken, you were brave, whole in ways I'll never be. Dad's search isn't to punish, it's because he sees what I see, your family now, like it or not. But I get why you ran. I ran too, once, from him. Come back. Let me prove it. Or at least let me see you walk, on your terms. Forever yours. Mads. Tears blurred the ink, a dam breaking after months of stoicism. I wanted to believe her, to teleport back to that rooftop kiss. But trust was a limb I'd lost too, severed in the wreckage of her doubt. Instead, I pinned the Polaroids to the co-op wall, a shrine to what was, and threw myself into work. My first exhibit came together in a haze of inspiration, limbs of light, black and white prints of Bilbao's shipyards at dawn, twisted steel echoing human resilience. Sophia handled the gallery hookup, a gritty space in the Casco Viejo, and word spread through the underground scene. Opening night was electric, wine flowing, murmurs of approval, flashes from local bloggers. I stood on my prosthetic, now customized with a Bilbao artisan's flair, etched with olive branches, fielding questions with a poise I didn't feel. "The leg?" I said to a curious journalist, gesturing down. It taught me that loss isn't subtraction, it's redistribution. What I gave away made room for sharper focus. Applause rippled, but it soured when I spotted him in the crowd, a suit, mid-40s, earpiece glinting under the spots. Hale's man, no doubt, his eyes scanning like a hawk. Panic spiked, visions of being bundled into a van, shipped back as Exhibit A in the Senator's redemption arc. I slipped out the back, heart pounding, and caught a midnight bus to San Sebastian, the coast's curve a siren call for escape. Madison's text started then, relentless, "Saw your exhibit online. Proud doesn't cover it. Please, talk to me." I read them in stolen moments, thumbs hovering over reply, but silence won every time. Betrayal's echo was too loud, not just her words, but the unspoken complicity, the way she'd let her father's world eclipse ours. Yet love doesn't evaporate, it simmers, poisoning the well. In San Sebastian's Pinkso bars, I'd nursed Sackley and eavesdrop on tourists, envying their careless joys. A street musician strummed Hallelujah, and I broke, slipping into a shadowed alley to sob for the woman who'd reshaped my horizon, only to redraw the lines. The Senator's net tightened. Whispers in hostels, American girls looking for her hero, big reward. I dyed my auburn-haired jet black, adopted oversized scarves to hide my face, and pushed east into France, the Pyrenees a natural barrier. But running clarified things too. In a Perpignan library, poring over Hemingway's Spanish sketches, I realized our story wasn't just drama, it was human, messy, the kind that forges or fractures. Madison hadn't betrayed me out of malice, she'd been caught in the crossfire of her upbringing, the Hale legacy a chain she'd yet to fully snap. A call came on a borrowed phone, Sophia's doing. "Mackenzie." Madison's voice, tentative, laced with that Virginia lilt. "I know you're there. Track the co-op, don't hate me." I exhaled, the line crackling like my resolve. "What do you want, Mads?" "To apologize." "Save it. I've heard the Senator's version, family gratitude. Spare me." Silence, then a sob. "It's not his script. I fired his PI last week. Told him if he wants me at Thanksgiving, he accepts us. All of us, me, you, the leg included." Her laugh was watery. "I miss you. The real you, crutches and curses and all. Come home. To Seville, or Bilbao, or hell, Brooklyn. Just let me walk beside you." The words hung, a bridge over the chasm. I wanted to cross, but fear rooted me. "You said I was broken. How do I unhear that?" "You don't," she whispered. "You build around it. Like you do everything. Please, Mac. One chance." I hung up without promising, but the seed took root. Days later, in a Carcassonne cafe, I booked a flight, not back, not yet, but to D.C., to confront the Senator on his turf. If love was to survive, it couldn't be in shadows. It had to face the storm. As the plane lifted over the Atlantic, I traced the prosthetic's curve, feeling not loss, but leverage. The search was over, mine was just beginning. Washington Dulles hit like a culture shock after Europe's embrace, the sterile hum of escalators, the bite of November chill seeping through my thin jacket, the overwhelming Americanness of it all, Starbucks on every corner, flags snapping in the wind like accusations. I'd landed unannounced, my black-dyed job faded to a muddy compromise, the Nikon slung over my shoulder like a shield. No dramatic reunion scripted in my head, just in need to stare down the man whose empire had nearly claimed us both. Madison didn't know I was coming. Her last plea had been a voicemail trembling, "I'm fighting for us, Mac. Don't give up on me yet." The Hale residence loomed in Georgetown, a federal-style fortress of brick and iron fences, Christmas lights twinkling prematurely like false cheer. Security waved me through after a tense standoff. "Miss Riley. The senator's expecting you," and I wondered if her leak had been deliberate. Inside, it was all polished wood and oil portraits, the air heavy with leather and legacy. Madison met me in the foyer, eyes wide, a gasp escaping as she rushed forward. "Mac. Oh God, you're here." Her arms wrapped around me, fierce and familiar, her scent, lavender and home, undoing months of walls in an instant. We held on, breath sinking, until a cough from the study doorway shattered it. Senator Hale, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, looking less like a titan and more like a man nursing a scotch. "Mackenzie," he said, extending a hand. "No entourage this time, just us three in the firelit glow. You've caused quite the stir. Sit. Please." We did, on facing wingbacks that felt like thrones in a trial. Madison perched beside me, her fingers lacing through mine, a silent vow. The senator leaned forward, elbows on knees, his gaze appraising, not hostile, but probing. "I owe you an apology," he started, voice gravelly. "My search. It started as control, I'll admit. Protect the family image, tie up loose ends. But it evolved. Madison made me see you weren't an end to tie, you were the beginning she needed." I stiffened, the old anger flaring. "Beginning? I lost my leg pulling her from a ditch, Senator. And your gratitude felt a lot like dismissal. Like I was the inconvenient truth in your perfect narrative." He winced, genuine, and set his glass down. "Fair. I grew up in a house where love was leverage, marriages for votes, affections for alliances. Madison's mother. She left because of it. I didn't want that for my girl. But watching her grieve you these months, it cracked me open. You're not leverage, Mackenzie. You're the real deal. Brave, stubborn, talented." He nodded at the camera. "That Bilbao exhibit. It went viral in my circles. Reminded me why we fight, for the broken bits that make us whole." Madison squeezed my hand, her voice soft. "He's stepping down next term, Mac. Said the real work's at home now." And I went to therapy. Alone, then with a specialist on trauma bonds. What I said that night. It was my fear talking, fear of losing you to the pain, of not being enough. But I was wrong. You're my enough. Tears pricked, but I held them, the room thick with unspoken histories. Betrayal cuts deep, Mads. Not just yours, mine too, for thinking love could be simple. But I've missed this. Us. I turned to the senator. "And you, if we're doing this, it's on our terms. No PIs, no spin. Just family, messy as it is." He nodded, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "Deal. Starting with dinner. Elena's making her pecan pie, non-negotiable." Laughter broke the tension, tentative at first, then full-throated, Madison's head on my shoulder as the fire crackled. "It wasn't a fairy tale fix, wounds like ours scar, but they also toughen." We talked late into the night, about Spain's ghosts, my rehab ahead with top docs on his dime, no strings, he swore, her dreams of a non-profit for queer youth caught in political crosshairs. Humanistic, yeah, recognizing that power bows to vulnerability, that love isn't possession but partnership. Months later, we returned to Seville, not as fugitives, but pilgrims. The finca was ours now, bought with exhibit proceeds and Hale family reparations. I walked the cobblestones unaided, prosthetic humming like a second heartbeat, camera capturing not just light, but lives, Madison teaching English to local kids, her laugh echoing, the senator visiting, awkward but earnest, sharing stories over tapas instead of testimonies. One evening, on that same rooftop where it began, I knelt, hole in my way, and pulled a ring from my pocket, simple platinum with an embedded olive leaf. Marry me, Mads. Not for the world, but for us. The broken, the brave, the beautiful mess. She cried, yes, tumbling out, pulling me up into a kiss that tasted of forever, salty, sweet, survived. Below, Seville pulsed, indifferent and eternal, while above, stars wheeled like witnesses to our quiet triumph. In the end, loss hadn't taken, it had given. A leg for a life, a betrayal for deeper bonds, a search that led not to capture, but to coming home. And in America's shadow, across the ocean's bridge, two women built their world, one step, one shutter click, one heartbeat at a time.